Venus in Aquarius. There are a lot of very interesting, unique things going on here in terms of planet sign synergies. There's probably at least 5 of those synergies that we need to understand in order to understand what Venus in Aquarius really can represent. The first thing we should discuss is that Venus is the planet of cooperation and Aquarius is the sign of service. So what Venus in Aquarius signifies is a cooperative person, particularly a humble teammate. So that's a very good quality, very useful person to have on a team. Next up, something very similar but slightly different in its nuance. Venus is the planet of partnership and Aquarius is the group identity. So this brings out the nuance that Venus in Aquarius is quite socially aware. Social, not like socialite, but social in terms of thinking of large groups. So Venus in Aquarius gives a lot of social awareness or social compassion. So Venus in Aquarius signifies a ego and self-interest which has been diffused and diversified from one's literal self into an extended self, as a family or as a social unit or as a team. The third synergy that's very important to understand when you're dealing with Venus in Aquarius is that Venus is the planet of beauty, and guess what? Even though Aquarius is owned by Saturn, Aquarius is the sign of large-scale mass appeal. Hence, the Sanskrit classics often say that Venus in Aquarius people will be beautiful and liked by everyone. So that is, in fact, the interpretation that you basically expect. The stock theoretical interpretation of Venus in Aquarius in a vacuum, in a theoretical vacuum, as the person is very appealing. The next resonance to understand in this Venus Aquarius recipe is a clashing resonance, a disharmonious resonance. It's that Venus is the planet of sensuality, but Aquarius is a sign of simplicity or practicality. You've seen this basic. So what you expect here is the person, similar to if Venus is in Virgo, the Venus in Aquarius tends to be simple or easy about their sensuality. Practical, let's say, about the sensuality. So they won't typically be very finicky or selective about who they will mate with, who they will partner with, who they will have a good time with, who they'll be friends with, who they'll choose to love, or what they'll buy, or what they'll take in. So that can be a great trait. Honestly, it doesn't have to be a negative trait. But theoretically, out of the box, it tends to work a little bit negative. The person gets themselves a little bit into situations where they should have had more discrimination. The final resonance that we have to understand in order to understand Venus in Aquarius is another good one. It's a harmonic resonance. It's Venus being receptive and Aquarius being receptive because it's eclectic and it's curious. And this also has to do with some of the other traits of Venus and Aquarius that are lower down on these trees that you see on the screen. Like Venus, because it's receptive, then it has to do with your learning intelligence, your ability to listen and take in instructions and information and be sensitive to details in what people present to you. So hence this synergy on receptivity is actually going to have an effect on the intellect. So the overall effect of this synergy of receptivity and eclecticism is an intelligent person. So it's a very receptive intellect, yet not gullible, kind of eclectic and picky, but very good listening, and hence very good learning. Now, what I would like to do is look at some of these principles in action, see how they work in real charts, or at least for real people. So here's a list of some of the people that I find interesting, who are well known, who have Venus in Aquarius. Oprah Winfrey, and Ellen DeGeneres. That's very interesting, right? Because they're both very broad appeal, television personalities, talk show hosts, where they're not really the focus of the attention, but they're the facilitator for somebody else getting the focus. Like their talk shows, so they're interviewing other people and putting spotlights on other people. So it's really showing also the first two synergies of Venus and Aquarius, which is the humble partner and the diffused ego. Then you have some musicians, Elton John, Janis Joplin. Interesting that Janis Joplin, Venus is in a Saturn sign. Really, that in itself, if you've ever listened to Janis Joplin, gives you a good sense for what Venus and Aquarius is like. Elton John also, because Aquarius is very gender bendy. Yoko Ono is an interesting one because her partner, John Lennon, was Venus in Virgo, which has a very similar effect or nature to many of the things that Venus gets in Aquarius. And hence they get along well. Paris Hilton, very interesting one. Kate Moss. Isaac Newton, Stephen Hawking, very intelligent people. J.R.R. Tolkien, very intelligent. Nostradamus, very intelligent. You have some politicians, F.D. Roosevelt, Mao Zedong, where they're having a lot of broad appeal. Muhammad Ali, also very broad appeal. Some famous actors, Nicolas Cage, Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis. Again, just their basic personality type shows you a lot about Venus in a Saturn sign, Venus in Aquarius. Quentin Tarantino also. I will give you a couple of specific notes about most of these people. Oprah Winfrey, her Venus is in Shravana. She's the talk show host. Shravana Nakshatra is the nakshatra for learning, listening. It's really emphasizing that, right? Her Venus is in the second house, Kazimi. So it's exactly conjoined with the Sun, or almost exactly conjoined with the Sun. And that Sun is the 8th Lord. So it gives a lot of charisma. Furthermore, this Venus has the exact aspect of the 11th Lord from the 11th house. So that's indicating that the talents of Venus in Aquarius, in her case, are going to be pushed towards operating in an entertainment field. Because that's what the 11th house represents. And she also, this Venus of hers also has an exact aspect from Jupiter. So that's going to indicate that it's going to operate really well and it's going to be fortunate. Another person I'd like to mention something about, Ellen DeGeneres, similar to Oprah Winfrey, Shravana Venus. And also similar to Oprah Winfrey, exact aspect from the 11th Lord. Paris Hilton, interesting. Beauty, appeal, maybe not exactly a Saturnian look though. Well, Paris Hilton's Venus is just entering the threshold of Dhanishta Nakshatra, where Dhanishta Nakshatra is more wealth and material oriented than Shravana. Rahu Ketu, it's becoming very unusual or exaggerated. Next, I'll just mention something about Newton, Isaac Newton, Satyabhishak Venus. And it's in the 5th house. So Satyabhishak is a nakshatra that has the ability to put things together and take abstract things and make them concrete. And the 5th house is the house of intelligence. Stephen Hawking is a Dhanishta Venus, but in the 5th house with an exact aspect from the 5th Lord. So here in his case, this Venus is actually, the intelligence is really coming out, but the exact aspect from the 5th Lord, while it's in the 5th house, is really making it intellect focused. And Dhanishta is making it become materialistic, right? Not very theistic, more physical and material. J.R.R. Tolkien. Shravana again, for a wordsmith. His Venus in Aquarius has an exact aspect of the 3rd Lord from the 3rd house. So like Oprah Winfrey's Venus is getting exact aspect of the 11th Lord from the 11th house, her Aquarius Venus is going to operate her towards entertainment. Tolkien, I guess you could say, is an entertainer, but he's more of a writer, right? So he's getting his Aquarian Venus is getting the exact aspect of the third lord, writing from the third house, writing. And it's a great Venus because it's in a Raja Yoga. Finally, Mao Zedong. I would like to use this opportunity to also mention that Venus in Aquarius has a communist feeling to it. Aquarius itself has a communist feeling to it because commune, the word commune, means togetherness and groupness, right? Communism is the idea that the group is more important than the individual. The individual should serve the group, not take from the group, and not excel more than the group excels. So that's all about cooperative, humble partnership, diffused ego. That's why Venus in Aquarius is a very communistic sensibility. So Mao, he also has a Dhanishta Venus, and his Venus is in the second house with the exact aspect of the 11th lord from the 11th house. So why doesn't he wind up like Oprah Winfrey? Well, one difference is that his Venus is in Dhanishta, so again, it's going to be non-theistic. He's like Hawking in this sense. And it's not going to be talkative oriented because it's not in Shravana. But the real thing is that the context of his chart, the Venus in Aquarius, is not particularly dominant. The real dominant thing in his chart is Saturn exalted in Raja Yoga in the 10th house, which is pushing him really strongly towards politics. So in the context of his chart being a political chart, Venus in Aquarius is going to give its political effect, which is to have a communistic attitude. Now, what we do in these videos with the planets and the signs is I show you a consistent technique that you can use for any planet and any sign. And the technique is very simple. You look for where the planet symbolizes something that's very, very similar to what the sign symbolizes. And once you find that, you assess whether or not the planet and the sign are harmonious about that thing or whether they're antithetical about that thing. The dissonant resonance reveals what's complex or difficult for the native. The harmonious resonance, on the other hand, indicates what's easy, what comes natural, what's an inherent strength for the native. What I'm teaching you really is the method of how to do astrological interpretation by going down into the engine of the symbolism and comparing the parts. The actual interpretation that you should give is going to be individualized per the individual chart. So if you have person A with the moon in Scorpio and person B with the moon in Scorpio, it's not going to be exactly the same interpretation. Because person B's moon might have an aspect from something and person A's moon doesn't, etc., 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 etc. But what I'm showing you in the videos is the backbone of what a planet and a sign symbolizes. And once you understand that backbone, you modify it based on the circumstances, the extraneous circumstances that are affecting an individual chart. So I hope you really like this system, not just this one video, but all the videos that we do on the planets and the signs. We'll do them all. And I hope you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those. And I hope to see you around soon. Thank you.